afternoon to in-house counsel and in-house legal professionals from all across North America and the world. And shout out, we have Atlanta, we have New York City, I'm sure we have other states as well. Let us know in the chat, and we're going to get started. Welcome, one and all, to In-House Connect. My name is Sean Hani. I'm the CEO and co-founder of In-House Connect. I'm thrilled to have you here with us today. Thank you for spending your breakfast time or your lunchtime with us. Shout out to Los Angeles, California in the house. I want to say thank you as well to our wonderful sponsor, legalbillreview.com, and our fantastic presenters today, Steve Bell, Brian Arbiter, and Jeff Adkins, who are going to tell us all about outside counsel spend management, and they're going to tell us how your legal team can uncover a 12%, an average 12% savings with legalbillreview.com. We have a wonderful panel, starting with Brian Arbiter, who has done a number of webinars with us, and it's a great fanfare. Brian has over 3 decades of experience as an equity partner in several of the largest law firms in the US and the world. He has expertise in a myriad of legal practice areas, including labor and employment, commercial contracts, litigation transactions, regulatory, and many more. As GC and VP of Clients and Law Firm Relations, Brian oversees LBR's legal and compliance issues and is the primary representative to all law firms with which LBR partners. He is joined by Jeff Adkins. Jeff has over a decade of experience in legal work and professional consulting, where he's specializing in contracts, compliance, and project management. Before legalbillreview.com, he led legal operations for a consulting firm, SIB, Fixed Cost Reduction, handling contract negotiations with a diverse array of clients, including major retailers, manufacturers, restaurants, universities, and real estate investment trusts. As VP of Operations at legalbillreview.com, he oversees analysis of legal bills from start to finish. He manages data, and he supervises the team of analysts, and he interfaces with clients and their law firms to identify and correct any excessive charges. And last but certainly not least is Steve Bell. Steve is a seasoned sales professional with over 15 years of experience in industries like software, SaaS, and services. He has built a customer-centric, ROI-driven approach and prides himself on being a trusted advisor to clients while building personal relationships. In his role as Director of Business Development, he will focus on delivering strong ROI and addressing corporate legal department challenges and advising on how to reduce legal spend. Jeff, Steve, and Brian, wonderful to have you on with us today, and I'll turn things over to Steve to get us started.
Shai, thank you very much for that. And wow, I'm glad you did the introductions instead of me. Those were much more detailed than I typically get into, but those were spectacular. So thanks all for being here and hearing who we are as an organization. We're going to be dividing this into 3 different pieces. You'll hear a little bit about who we are as the organization. Then I'll turn it over to Jeff and Brian, who are going to jump into the meat and potatoes. But I like to start off, I know that obviously everybody is on mute, but with an engaging question here. So with that is, do you think that your organization has been overbilled in the last year? I don't know, Shai, if you had this set up as a poll question. It looks like you do. So we'll give a second or two for that. But looking at the results that are coming in early, it was going to be where I was expected it was to go. So we'll give it another, let's say 30 seconds or so as these results pop through. Okay, I think we're good on participants. We're at about 50%. If we get a few more to respond, we'll go ahead and jump to that next one here. As that's going through, I will jump to my next slide so you can see who we are and to think about that as if you've already answered. Okay, quick answer when it comes to the poll question that we had pop through for us here is, I would say that the majority of the folks, which I had a feeling this was going to be the case, have said yes. They do feel they've been overcharged. And the other handful has said, I'm not sure, which is also a common thing that we hear. Only one said no. So congrats to you. If you're feeling that is not taking place for you, you are in the minority. So that's again, a good place to be if you're there. To hit who we are as an organization. And for those folks, if you don't know me, if you've never spoken with me before, I liken myself to the Micro Machine Man. So if I talk too fast, throw something in the chat, say slow down or repeat that. I'm happy to do that. As an organization, Legal Bill Review, been around since 2016. You can do all your research on the organization, like I'm sure you're going to pop into our website afterwards. But we are a service that is zero risk. I think that's a big thing you're going to hear from our organization. I like to liken it to our 000 promise. When working with Legal Bill Review, there is no upfront cost, so there's zero CapEx that's required, zero risk. You'll never pay more than you're already paying today with your current invoices. And we have zero implementation, and we're typically done in 2 to 4 hours. So you may be saying to yourself, okay, Shai told me at the beginning, these guys are going to be able to save me money, and now you just told me that we don't have to do any kind of investment. So what's the catch? There really isn't a catch. Our job is to make sure that we're maintaining those relationships that you have today while providing you additional operational efficiencies as an organization. With that said, how we help, right? We do it in three big buckets. We save organizations time by either providing that extension of your legal ops team, which you may or may not have, or we'll say replace that service if you don't have it inside that in-house today. We also reduce those legal expenses, because we know that experienced attorneys, they are expensive, right? So I like to say that we're providing an opportunity cost or a soft cost back, taking it off of their plates. I like to also say that if you're doing it in-house, are you actually reviewing those expenses in the proper way? Or are you looking at it like I look at my credit card statement, go through saying, okay, that charge is real. Okay, whoa, hold the heck. Where is this? Why is this going on? That charge shouldn't be there. So understanding if you're seeing those, and then also what are you doing about it? And then the last piece, which I think is unspoken, and it's a question that we hear a lot of, is improving the attorney relations. So it's nothing more awkward than to have to go back and have a conversation with who you're working with and essentially renegotiate on price or saying, I think you're overcharging me when you're working with that person on a day-to-day basis. And the firms are also pretty responsive and respectful of the fact that when you bring a service in like ours, that review is taking place and they want to maintain you and keep you as a happy customer. Because if you have animosity that's being built under the covers or that you're not really speaking to, that ends up being a situation where they'll end up losing your business and they didn't even know they had an opportunity to save it. All right. So one thing I do want to hit on here too is that we do work with all different legal softwares that are out there, but we do have an official partnership with TR's Legal Tracker. And that's really big to think about because it now gives you a complete, full, comprehensive offering that hits the manual review side of it. So we have seen it before where the flags go up and are you doing anything about those flags? The software and other AI technologies that are out there, they're going to say, yes, I can see this. I can do that. I'm going to find it. But are they able to put what you're going to see here from Jeff and from Brian, the thought power behind it to be able to go back and have that conversation with those firms and say, this is the why. So there is no real question as to, is this a valid reduction that's being provided by legal bill review? All right. So you might say, okay, he's told me about the 000 promise, the zero risk, zero CapEx model. And again, with the zero implementation fee, but there has to be, you're a company, right? You're in business to make money. Yes, we absolutely are. But we believe so strongly in our product that if we are not returning that investment back to you, we aren't charging you. Essentially, it's on a credit basis. So going forward, we'll credit that next invoice or two. We progress through there. One big thing to think about is we are a tiered based service. So we do give volume based discounts. Our highest level where we start at in terms of our fee is at 5%. It can go down again as your spends increase with us as an organization. As I mentioned, we're thinking about that 5%. We review $100,000 of legal fees. We're at that 5%. And as we saw earlier and Shai mentioned, we're looking at that 12% is our average. Some have seen 15 to 20% in terms of savings. You keep the other piece. I actually was talking to somebody the other day and they said, I can't even put my money in the stock market and get 7% without any kind of risk. It's a nice way to think about our service as we move forward. This is what it looks like when it comes to that promise. I mentioned that credit. So when we think about the savings, the first model is a 15% savings. We're able to obviously find 1.5 million in this example, so it's at 15%. And then you see the net savings of $1 million. And then you jump into those where we were not able to, just in that quarter. The average of our customers through our entire lifetime is that everyone is able to see a savings. As we know, bills ebb and flow, right? You might have a peak at one point, or you may have just from one firm that actually isn't one of those bad offenders. So if there is that situation, again, it credits off of that going forward. A good example here is your net out of pocket doesn't change as we move there. So one of the things I want to get ready to hand it over to Jeff on is I think one of our best selling qualities is that we do have analysis by subject matter by those US based attorneys. I'll let Jeff dive into that more, but I think it's really, is it again, going back to the differentiators, is it us against onshore? Is it us against AI? Is it us against offshore with a little bit of technology? Our subject matter specifics make a big difference here. Jeff?
All right, yeah, I'll go ahead and take over from there, and I just want to really dive into the nuts and bolts of our process. One general observation I've come to strongly believe is that if you want to keep your legal spending under control, as with any cost area that any business faces, you need an organized review process. It needs to be consistent. It needs to be predictable for your outside vendors, in this case, your law firms. And so I'll go a little bit step by step into how we do it, just so you get an overall sense. Yeah, so starting here with outside counsel guidelines, that's really the heart of what we do, the starting point. We recommend and even insist really that our clients have detailed outside counsel guidelines. I imagine for many, if not most of you, your company already has outside counsel billing guidelines in place. They've been drafted, they've been communicated to your law firms, and they just set your expectations. And the more clear those can be, the better. This should enable a lot of transparency into how the billing will be approached, what will be allowed, what will be disallowed, and what methods of recourse there might be. When we start working with any new clients that don't have outside counsel guidelines in place, or maybe they do, but they're a little outdated, they're not quite happy with those guidelines, they're not really servicing their needs. One service we provide just at the beginning when we're coming on board with a new client is to help them draft or revise their guidelines and put them in place so that you've got just all the industry standard protections, laying a set of ground rules for your law firms. And I see a note in the chat here for suggestions on how to address pushback from law firms on outside counsel guidelines. And yeah, this will happen from time to time. I think one thing is you've got to make sure the guidelines are reasonable. From our perspective, we are in a position to see a lot of companies' outside counsel guidelines, and we know the various topics that they cover, and we know what rules are in place generally with most companies and what rules are more one-off exceptions that we don't see very often. One piece of advice I would give is don't try to do anything too out of the norm. There might be certain things specific to your company regard to billing format or procedurally how they're submitting bills or that kind of thing. Then companies have their own policies on anything from diversity mandates, media and communications rules, things that kind of go outside the realm of billing. And those should be included. They're important to your companies. But when it comes to billing, we're looking for clarity. We're looking to address main areas. Don't block bill. Make sure you're including detailed narratives to support what you're doing. Making sure the appropriate level of staff is handling each activity so that you're not paying high partner rates for work that could have been easily delegated down to a more junior staffer to handle just as well. There are really several dozen aspects of what you can include. And I think if they meet those industry standards, you're not going to get a lot of pushback from your law firms. But if you do, I think it comes down to hearing out each law firm, seeing what their concern is. Often those concerns can just come from a fear of the unknown of how those guidelines are going to be applied. I think if it's clear that this is all about basic value and fairness, you'll get good faith cooperation from your law firms. A lot of clients newly rolling out guidelines are concerned about how their firms are going to respond. But one thing to remember is this is very common for law firms. Most of their clients that they're working with have outside counsel guidelines in place. Most of those guidelines say roughly the same thing, and they're very accustomed to complying with those. So usually, thankfully, we don't get that much pushback when they're rolled out. And I see the poll question went up here. Does your company currently have outside counsel guidelines? And it's a pretty good split here, about half and half between those who do have them. Only one says that they have them, but do not enforce them. That's actually a much more common thing. I'm a little surprised it's only one. A lot of our clients will say, we went through a good month or two of drafting these, getting feedback internally from all the stakeholders. We finally drafted our company guidelines. Thank goodness that's over. And now they're in place, but they don't go that extra step of actually enforcing those guidelines. So that's a really key part of this. The law firm should know that the guidelines really mean something. And so having that regular bill review process is a big part of that. So just talking about how we do it, first off, we collect legal bills the same time and generally the same method that our clients do. So that could be usually one of two ways. Our clients will receive their bills either by email or if they use an e-billing software service like Legal Tracker or any of a dozen others on the marketplace, we can get access to that e-billing software and pull those bills directly. And so once we get those bills in, we'll start our review process. As Steve mentioned, and as we've covered, what sets us apart, we feel like on the marketplace, is that this review is done by real human beings, and they are US-based licensed attorneys. So every charge on every bill is actually going to get looked at by someone who practices law. They've billed hourly in a law firm setting. They know how this works. And that can really supplement any AI-based service like e-billing software, if you have that, looking for things like new timekeepers being added to a matter that haven't been approved yet, or someone billing outside of their agreed upon hourly rate. We can look for these things as well, but include that additional layer of human analysis of, did the client get their money's worth out of the work that was done here? And was it billed in conformance with the guidelines transparently? So you can see there are a few things listed here, what we're looking for. Standards of billable work, just to make sure that every charge is properly billable, whether that's an hourly fee. Is it a billable task, for one thing? Is it something that was handled by the proper level of staff? Even things that are not hourly fees, that are pass-through expenses and disbursements, are these charges reimbursable according to the billing guidelines? One common example would be things like legal research expenses, Westlaw. Generally, we would recommend that guidelines cover whether those are reimbursable expenses or whether they're to be considered law firm overhead that the law firm should really cover as part of their cost of doing business. So we're using the guidelines as our North Star as we do these reviews, and that's something that reflects the client's own preferences. So that can vary a little bit, but generally these things that we see on the screen are the main things we're looking for because they're sources of overbilling.
So we can hit this one, Jeff, or we can skip the question because I know we discussed it a little bit already. It's up to you. Do you want me to launch the question or just jump through?
So do we have this as a poll question?
So the prior poll question had, do you have them and are you enforcing them? 48% say yes, we have them and enforce them. One person says we have them and don't enforce them. And then 33%, no, we don't have any outside counsel billing guidelines. And then 3 don't, but are currently actively drafting them now. So it's great that they're on the webinar. Back to you, Steve.
Sounds great. So I'll let Jeff continue with the process of, now we know that there is enforcement of those guidelines, which actually I would say is a little bit higher rate than we hear when we're talking to potential customers. So it's refreshing to hear. So congrats to you all on that one. But my question will be more towards the end. Think about this, stew it, throw it in the comments, is when you review them, what do you feel your actual return is on those that you do raise your hand in question? So think about that. And if you want, throw that in the chat. Jeff, back to you.
Yeah, I always love hearing from people on what their current practices are. Because again, it runs the gamut. We've got a lot of companies we talk to that do a fairly robust internal review. They really do enforce their guidelines. And so maybe that's going well, but it's just consuming a lot of time and internal resources. And so that's why they're wanting to talk to us. Probably a little more common is that they're just not devoting that time to enforcement and active review of the billing as they really should. And so they want us to handle it. But yeah, just procedurally how we're going through this, that review process is the key thing to what we're doing. So it's US-based licensed attorneys. They're looking at every charge on every bill. And then, so once we've completed that review, it's going to lead us one of 2 directions. The first thing is that the billing could be clean. And this does happen a lot. A lot of law firms are very detailed and conscientious in their billing. They make a great effort to comply with billing guidelines, to show their work, show the value they've provided. When that's the case, we're going to approve that billing for payment. We're not going to go looking for things that aren't there because that can, first of all, there's just no basis for it. And that can hurt the relationship with the law firm. We're not out here seeking arbitrary cuts. We just want to target the excessive charges and overbilling. What that necessarily means is that a lot of bills will just be clean. We're going to approve those for payment in full.
You mentioned there, Jeff, sorry to cut you off, that I think the group should understand is that also is what makes our pricing structure so important to understand, with it being a flat rate. So we are not a collections agency and we are not incentivized to find things that don't exist, right? So I think that's something for folks to understand, because we really do value the relationship. We put the blinders on and we say, all right, is this matter correct, incorrect, etc.? Was the narrative and description of a high enough quality? So I really think that's a big piece. Hopefully the group here does as well. Back to you, Jeff.
All right, yeah. So let's talk about what happens when we do find overcharges. So that would be the next slide. Yeah. So we're going to present our findings to the law firms. So this is something where we're going to handle that directly. We get in touch directly with the law firms and say, we've reviewed this bill or this set of bills, and we send fairly detailed analysis along with that. I think we might have an example of what that looks like. Yeah, so here. So this is fictional sample analysis just for the sake of discussion here. But this is the format of the analysis that we send. It goes very granular. It's going to be individual charge by individual charge on each bill. And the ones that we flag as part of our process and say, okay, this charge is either non-compliant with the guidelines, or it presents some other issue, or it just presents some questions where we can't fully substantiate that charge without maybe a little extra information. We're going to detail that. Our analysts are writing this really in plain English to the law firms. We're going to have a sentence or two, maybe a small paragraph saying, okay, here's what happened here. Here's what we noticed that gives us concerns about this charge. It could be any number of things. So in this case, we've got a few different examples. One charge here was flagged for excessive time, saying that the time spent on this individual task or the project as a whole that it's a part of was excessive given the nature of that task. Another thing, in the second one, we have inadequate description, where they just haven't provided enough detail to substantiate how they spent that time, which can lead to a lot of inflated bills. That's one of the things we see most often, is when they get very vague, it's hard to tell that the work was really tangibly moving the ball forward and that it provided good value. In another instance, we have duplicative work, where it's just either one person did the same thing twice and they didn't need to do it the second time, or two different people, more often we'll see, are doing the same thing. They're not coordinating with each other. And that second timekeeper's attention and involvement just wasn't necessary because maybe unbeknownst to them, their colleague had already done that. We actually see that happening a lot. And then junior lawyer training, when a more junior attorney is engaging in something that's primarily for their own exposure to something, maybe tagging along to something, conducting some routine research in an area of the law they would be expected to be more familiar with as an experienced practitioner. If that is primarily for that junior attorney's benefit rather than for your benefit as the client, that activity should not be billable. So we're outlining all these things that we find, putting them on a report to the law firm, and outlining not just what we find wrong with the charge, but also how we would propose to remedy that. In some cases, we might propose to remove the charge from the bill entirely. In other cases, we might just propose to reduce it. There's a lot of thought process that goes into this, a lot of experience that's being relied on by our analysts doing this work. But that's ultimately the work product that we produce and put in front of the law firms.
And to add to that, this goes back to my comment I made earlier about the software raising a flag, or AI raising a flag and probably creating a generic description or example of what needs to be adjusted, where we have live human beings that have, as I mentioned earlier, years of experience in the field, and that can create, as Jeff said, real speak that shows the example and a recommendation on the reduction, where if you're using an AI or using software that might just throw up a flag, it may not provide you that recommendation on the adjustment. And then, as Jeff's going to take back over here in a second, around the pieces around what happens when this gets over to the firm and that process that goes forward next. But before we jump to that, we've got a question for you all. Please use your chat for this one, which is, what's the craziest thing you've seen on a bill? We'll give you a minute and a half to throw something in the chat here, and then Jeff and Brian will read a few of those off. I've got some examples as you're filling those out that are from some of our team that we've seen recently that might crack you up. So I will say I read at a 5th grade level sometimes, especially when I'm presenting. So if I stumble, folks, please don't make fun of me too badly. So one of the things we heard was a firm billed 22 and a half hours on a finalized document with unclear timing as the actual when it's actually going to be finalized. And another firm billed for the same exact matter in that same piece. So we're seeing that. And we've seen another one was from July, 1,088 hours across 115 entries for preparation. And just things like that. And we, on that bill alone, we adjusted over $700,000. So that's just some unique examples that we've seen. Obviously, we have a much larger pool of those examples because we're pushing back more than probably teams that don't look at things at all. Jeff, did you want to moderate from what we're seeing in the C1 here? Actually, that's from Shy. So 5 hours to draft a cover letter. Pretty crazy.
Great example. Anything like that, they can bill for it, but it just does not make sense. And so I think that's where we can really add some value. And another thing too, as far as crazy things that we see, one thing I'll add is that on any individual legal bill, a certain charge might look really innocuous. But one thing we're doing as well is looking at the total picture. And depending on what types of legal matters a law firm is handling for you, we do find instances where we've got one law firm handling dozens and dozens of separate matters for any given client. And if you have timekeepers working across all of those matters or a lot of them, their individual contributions and activities on any given legal bill, since generally each matter is going to be billed differently each month, might look totally routine and innocuous. But we've seen, well, when you add up everything across all those bills, you might have one single timekeeper billing upwards of 22, 23, 24 billable hours in one day. They're just doing it a half hour at a time across multiple matters. In terms of crazy things, we see that really a lot more often than we should, that kind of thing. I could go on and on about examples there.
There's two extremes I'd like to share from what I've seen in career. One is sometimes you think as a client, a law firm will come to you and show you their great billing technology. They'll say, look, we use automatic timers, so we can never misbill you because the timer starts when we start doing something and it stops when we stop. So it's all accurate, and anything you question, we'll just prove the time records. I've seen them where the lawyers forgot to turn off the timer. So a bill would come out for 3 days in a row. Somebody had 12, 14, 15 hours every day. And when we dug into it, it turned out they really weren't billing that amount of time. They just forgot to manually say, stop the timer. Or to the point Jeff just made, where you get an attorney where there's a 0.2 every day. And as Jeff said, if you look at that on its own for one day, you may say 0.2, why bother? There can't be a problem with that. But then as you dig, it turns out that the timekeeper, what they were doing is every day on every file, they would come in and simply record a 0.2. And their justification was, I considered every file every day. But that's not really valuable work to you, and you wouldn't pick that up on its own unless you're looking at the bill as a whole and asking those questions, which is what we do.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I'm sorry, Jeff.
And I see we have in the chat a great example here. Someone found a $9,000 charge to file a provisional patent application, and that did not include the preparation of the application. These are great examples. And look, these extreme examples, they're not necessarily the norm. You're not going to see those on every bill you look at, thankfully. What we see is usually a lot more subtle, but it is a good illustration that some of these things are coming through on the bills. The law firms, for everything they might point out that they do to scrub the bills, make sure they're clean before they get to you as the client, as Brian mentioned, some of those things are still going to fall through that net. And it just makes it very clear, if you're not doing a robust bill review process of some sort, whether internally or outsourced, you could be missing some pretty outrageous things that are getting through. And we have another example here, 9 hours to draft a 2.5-page letter to request a continuance. Great example. This stuff happens. And sometimes I feel like maybe that amount of time really was spent, even if it was not spent efficiently, and you've got good grounds to object to charges like that. So yeah, thanks for the examples, everyone. These are really good and just a good illustration. This is happening to a lot of companies from a lot of law firms. These charges are getting through. So just to wrap up procedurally what we do about this. So to recap how we got here, we're receiving the bills, we're reviewing them in accordance with the client's guidelines. Clean bills are approved for payment. But here's where we do flag charges, when we do have reductions to propose. Our service takes that all the way across the finish line. We get the law firm's agreement to those reductions. So rather than just point out what's wrong with the billing, we're going to take that to the law firm, make a proposal, and we're not done until they've agreed to reduce charges that we've flagged. So that's in the form of a document that we call a credit memo. It's just our term for it. It's going to be page after page of detailed analysis, all the charges we reviewed, and all of the reductions that we've proposed. Once we reach agreement with the law firm, they're going to e-sign that credit memo. And this happens after discussion. There's an appeals process. Brian's going to cover that in just a minute and kind of talk through how that goes, because we cannot unilaterally impose these cuts. We can't make the law firm agree to this, but we can persuade them to agree to it based on a close reading of the guidelines and based on the soundness of our analysis. So we're constantly going through that process, reviewing bills, reporting results to law firms, negotiating and obtaining signed credit memos. And then once we reach agreement with the law firm, we're sending a payment authorization to our clients telling them, okay, this bill or this set of legal bills has been through our full process and it's fine to pay now. And then regularly on a quarterly basis, we're issuing these savings reports to our clients so that there is just transparency into the impact that we're having. It's going to list every individual bill that we've reviewed and resolved during that period and the reduction that we have obtained to the bill. You'll see some of these have no reductions at all. Most of these do have reductions. It's always going to be a mix, but this is how we keep ourselves honest on that performance guarantee that Steve mentioned.
And I'll give a little teaser here at the end. We do have some really nice dashboards that are live, so you don't have to wait for that quarterly report. You can see how they're going. So we'll see a couple of screenshots of those at the end. But Jeff, this was a great walkthrough about our processes. I'm going to hand it over to Brian to go through what happens if we do have those appeals and what that process looks like.
Absolutely. As Shai and others mentioned, one of my roles here is the Vice President of Law Firm Relations. So I head up our appeals group. And what that means is anytime any of our clients, their outside law firms, have any questions or disagree with anything we've done or want a conversation about anything, it comes to me and my group. I come at this with a lot of experience prior to LBR for over 3 decades. I myself was a billing partner, equity partner in big law. So I know the seat of these lawyers and what they're dealing with, and am generally able to help us on your behalf as a customer get any issues with the firms resolved and help them agree to sign off on what appropriate adjustments are when we find the kinds of problems that Jeff and Steve have been talking to so far this morning. In terms of our approach, we take it collaboratively. We never approach firms and dictate anything. We respect that there are working relationships between clients and their law firms, and that you need those law firms to continue to want to work for you and with you. And everything we do is about reaching agreement and preserving those relationships for customers. As Jeff pointed out, we review the bills based on the guidelines. Our focus is just, did the entry comply or not comply? And if not, we explain why. If a law firm thinks we got it wrong, either because they think we misread the guidelines or didn't understand what they submitted, or because there's more information that they want to give us and they think if we had it, then we would change our mind, we welcome all of that. And as the 4th bullet point here points out, we'll take it in any way the law firm wants to submit it. Sometimes firms ask for a phone call, we'll do that. Sometimes they will just write up a description, we'll take that. Other times they'll mark up the report we gave them and submit it as a PDF, or they'll prepare their own Word document or Excel. However they want, we take it. When they get our initial analysis, our first credit memo, there's a link that shows them how, if they want to have a conversation or question anything we've done, they can click the appeal link and it opens up and makes it easy for them to submit however they want. And probably the most important bullet is this last one, which is our process with your firms does not end until agreement has been reached. So everything is done by agreement. And I can't think of an experience I've had at LBR where we haven't finished an appeal other than resulting in agreement between us on your behalf and your law firm.
And a thing to add there that I think I love Brian's approach is he gets on the phone and, okay, tell me where we got it wrong, right? And it immediately transitions from what could be a very confrontational conversation to okay, this is going to be open. And as we mentioned, there is no additional incentive for our organization to dispute something that's not valid. All it will do is ruin our relationship and ruin your relationship with the firm. That's what I love about Brian's approach of coming in and saying, tell me where we went wrong. Let's have a discussion about this. And again, I think everybody puts their guards down when they hear that initial entry there.
It's very true. And oftentimes, believe it or not, your firms haven't read the guidelines that you sent to them. So they're coming at this thinking that we're suggesting adjustment to their bills, and they forgot that you've actually given them rules to comply with, and they didn't look at those and make sure that they were complying, or they think that we're challenging the quality of the work they did, which we're not. So when we get into conversations with firms, we go out of our way to emphasize up front that their work is good, it's valued, they're a valued firm, or you wouldn't be using them. That this is really about compliance with guidelines, and that's it. And let's talk about that issue. And as Steve said, that tends to cool things down. This slide is an example of the appeal form. So if they click the appeal link, they come here, and as you see, they can fill out that bottom field and just write up a description, or it's a little cut off, but if we were to continue to scroll down, there's an ability to upload documents, and they can upload actual examples of the work product they did if they think that's helpful, or they can upload any written explanations that they've prepared. But again, they don't have to. They could have a phone call, they can just describe it. However they do it, we meet them. But when they submit this, it comes automatically and immediately to us. We turn these things right away, generally 1 to 3 business days, and it's back in the law firm's hand. And we move to prompt agreement so that they will agree and sign off and get paid, and everybody's happy, and we move on to the next month's bills.
Awesome. Great example of that. So now on to my 2 favorite slides. As I mentioned, I don't know what it is with me. I love dashboards. So us being able to show you what your spend looks like, what the savings looks like, really helps when you're thinking about pushing anything through when it comes to those internal decisions as to why do I want to open up the full faucet to legal bill review, right? I know we might start off with just a small portion, but we're able to show the savings, and you're able to go back to leadership and say, look, we've already seen it here. We always say you're going to get the most bang on your buck with starting by turning the faucet completely on because of the 0 risk guarantee that we have. But we understand some folks like to take it a little bit slower. I like to look at what trends, right? I'm a salesperson, so we look at things and everything in relating to trends. So when I'm thinking about relationships on the side of, if I was the customer here, I'm looking at, is somebody's behavior changing over time? Is by working with legal bill review, are we able to see that behavioral change? And one of the questions I get a lot is what happens after working with you for 3 months, 6 months, a year? Do folks still continue using your service? And the answer is absolutely. Because though we may see a peak right at the beginning when we're really going out there and correcting those behaviors, those accidents are still going to happen. And then at the same point, what do you think is going to happen if you remove, not to say that we're the cops, right? So I used to be a teacher in my old days, right? If the teacher left the room, we would always goof around. I used to use a trick. I had shoes that made a very loud sound when I walked down the hallway. I really knew that in the first couple of weeks. So then I would actually come back and I would go out of the classroom and I would just walk on my toes and come back and see if I changed their behaviors without having the clicking of the heels saying that the teacher's coming back. Same situation here. So if you remove the cop, you remove the teacher, you remove the principal, they'll go back to those bad behaviors again. So it's one of those reasons why we end up being what we call a sticky with inside an organization, because you're always able to see benefit from the service. As I mentioned, there's another slide here of how it's broken down. You can go into a lot of detail with that. You can see by firm, by matter, and then you can dive into each exact piece as well. And I really love when you go by what's the status, right? So where does everything stand? How much is being reviewed? How much is in the appeals process? So you may say, okay, I know I have so much sitting out here that I have to pay. And again, we handle inside that same month in a typical fashion. All right, so I know we have just one more slide here. So we talk about our onboarding. I mentioned at the beginning, it's fast and it's simple. Jeff can hit this in more detail, but I like to say that we do this in a unique way, right? So you start off by working with me. My job is to make sure that you are 100% satisfied. We do not just sign a deal like you're selling a car, you drive off the lot, you never see or hear from us again. I am always involved, and my team is always involved. So we will do a kickoff process after the agreement is signed. We actually just inserted a new customer success team that is also going to be working hand in hand with me, the sales team. And our job is to, again, make sure that there are no concerns. And we do, after the implementation, we have an ongoing check-in process as well. So Jeff, do you want to hit the implementation from the kickoff process through the onboarding complete, and then I'll take back over.
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. So we start with the kickoff call, and there's a lot of communication up front. This doesn't take usually more than an hour, but we want to get in front of the internal team, make sure that based on the size of the legal department, just make sure everyone understands what we're doing and the change that's happening, which is not a drastic change at all, but we're taking this one narrow piece, the bill review and payment approval process, outsourcing it to us, taking that off people's plates internally, which they usually love it. It's not everyone's favorite thing to do. But we had that kickoff call to make clear our process to the whole expanded team inside, and also to gather some important information from them on just the context of your law firm relationships, your legal matters that they're handling, anything that we should know going into this. Next, we get the guidelines in order. So if there are no billing guidelines in place, we'll help our clients draft and implement those guidelines, roll them out to the law firms. If there are guidelines in place, we can just roll with those, we can use those, or we can update and optimize those guidelines if, for example, they haven't been updated in a few years and you want us to help with those. But this is all happening in the first few weeks. Once those guidelines are finalized, communicated to the law firms, which may already be the case when we come in, if you already have guidelines and you're happy with them, we can start reviewing all those new bills. We'll provide an email template for you to introduce us to your law firms, explain who we are and what we're doing. And then all new bills coming in after they've been notified of the new bill review and payment approval process are fair game for this process. We just start reviewing bills as we receive them, and it's pretty seamless from there. Great thing about our implementation process, there's no particular training, there's no software to acquire and download and set up and train on or set up an account with. This is an outsourced professional service. It's not software. And for people who are brand new to our service, these days everything is in software. And while there are tech components to this and there are nifty little tools like the client dashboard that Steve mentioned that you can log into and monitor status in real time, the real work is being done by human beings that are operating as an extension of your in-house legal operations team. So the implementation is very easy. We're aiming to come in and flex our process to fit your existing processes so that there's as little disruption as possible.
And Jeff, that was a great summary there, because as Shai mentioned at the beginning, I came from the software world, right? So then that's where I came in here and I said, let's think about this. We were always zero risk. And now we are actually, when you think about we're zero CapEx to begin working with us, software, you always have that expense. And then on the same front, you always had an implementation cost and an implementation timeline. Gosh, I think I had places where implementation timelines were 12 to 18 months to get everything rolled out before they were able to see the benefit of our services, where we are hours to be able to provide those services and those benefits to folks. I think that's really big, and it's refreshing to hear you say that you realize the savings on the time side of it compared to that. So with that said, let's open it up for some questions. Throw them in the chat and then we can go through here. I know that the other poll was launched here for if you'd like to hear more from us. So Shai, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, awesome. So a couple of things. Thank you, Jeff, Brian, and Steve for explaining all about how legalbillreview.com works and answering some questions and sharing some stories. Folks, if you're interested in having a demo or learning more, you can say yes or let us know separately and we'll connect you. Just looking in the chat. Do you provide a service just to draft attorney guidelines? No bill review. First question from Brittany.
I'll field that one. We don't really. It's part of our onboarding and implementation when we sign up a new client. But so it's not a standard part of our process to do just the guideline consultation. But if you get in touch with us, we'll see if it makes sense. We find that the two things really go hand in hand really well. So if you create those guidelines, you definitely want to enforce them through an orderly way. Get in touch. We'll see what we can do.
All right. Awesome. Second question, talk about the guarantee. I think I saw a guarantee, or talk about, what clients can expect. Is there a guarantee? Is it not? And Greta is chiming in as well. Do you only review U.S. law firm invoices?
So I'll take both of those, if that's okay with you, Jeff. So I'll answer the second one first. So typically, yes, we do only review those that are based in the US. There is extenuating circumstances where we could review those outside of that. That would be more of a detailed conversation for us to have and how the process needs to be changed from where we interact today. And when, again, we can hit on that and the whys and the hows behind it. But I know that's something that we're open to entertaining, especially as we grow our business in the future, is the ability to do worldwide and like global front. To go back to the performance guarantee, right? So I'm actually going to jump back a bunch of slides and have the example back up here. So if that's okay with everybody, hopefully nobody has issues with that going too quick. Okay, so what does that mean? How does it work? So as I mentioned, our fee starts at 5% of all invoices that we review. And if we do not at least hit what our fee is, we will credit that back. As we see here, we typically return 12% to folks. So if you think about subtracting our fee on that, you're going to see a 7% return on your money, and you're not having to pay anything to get that, right? So typically when you think about, I'm going to deploy a software or I'm going to deploy an additional service, you're paying for a service and you're paying for that technology in with hopes of a return. With us, we're straight up saying we are guaranteeing you will not pay more than your original invoice that you see. Again, as I mentioned, it's one of those things that it's on a quarter by quarter review, right? Because volumes will ebb and they will flow. And in this case, so what you'll do is you'll be starting in the next quarter with, if we only reach 4% savings, you'll start with $100,000 credit if we reviewed and that our fee was at, that $500,000 there, and that same 10 million example. So I don't know if that provides enough detail, but yes, we absolutely, when you think about our service, 000, zero risk. So that is our performance guarantee that we're going to be able to give you at least that return. Folks have seen at least that average of 7%, where they put in your pocket that 7%.
Also curious, and just to clarify, like legalbillreview.com provides a team of like outside counsel bill reviewers, right? Is it a combination of, it's not technology, it's actual humans
We like to call it a tech-enabled service. So there is a little bit of secret sauce on our end when it thinks about the ingestion and starts going through the process. But we do have a slide that I don't think we popped up today that it goes through. We actually have 2 analysts that do a review. So there's the first level reviewer, goes through, makes sure that they have those detailed descriptions and the specific areas that are called out. Then we have a second person that goes through that as well. So yes, US-based attorneys, subject matter experts. Again, going back to the subject matter experts, I think that really drives the difference too. If you're using a offshore resource, they might be able to flag something, but they're not going to be able to flag it, provide the narrative that goes along with it and the recommendations for the changes, because they just flat out don't have that experience like we do.
Got it. Okay. I think we'll wrap up here. I'll kick it back to the panel for some final thoughts, remarks. If you just want to say thanks, that's cool too. We'll start with Jeff. I'll kick it to you for final remarks.
Yeah, I'll just keep it very brief. Thank you for everyone's time. We really appreciate the interest and we'd love to work with you.
Awesome. Brian,
you're on mute.
Sorry, I know it takes me a long time to get off mute. I just echo, thank you all. We look forward to working with anyone who's interested. And even if you don't know, if you're interested, just talk with us. As you see, we're nice people. We're approachable. We'll have a good conversation.
Awesome. And Steve?
And I think Brian stole my line, which was exactly that. If you want to know more, we're obviously open to having conversations. My commitment to you all is that we're not going to beat down your doors and be that annoying person that you're going to have to beat off with a stick. Our job is to make sure that we are a fit for you. And if we are not a fit and we're not able to provide a service, we can shake hands and meet for a drink sometimes if we're in town.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So drinks on LBR at the next event. All right. Thank you, Jeff, Brian, and Steve, and Bethany behind the scenes for all your help and your hard work. Thanks everybody for tuning in and for the great questions. I'm going to wrap up here. Hope everybody has a wonderful Monday, great rest of their week. More webinars coming this week, so sign up if you haven't already. And I look forward to seeing everybody back at the next IHC webinar soon.